This is estimation and rounding practice number 2. So if you have the companion assignment that goes with this, we are going to be doing, I think we will do the first 4 practice problems. And if you don't have the companion assignment, then you will get some practice adding and subtracting using rounding and estimation. Alright, so we're going to get started. Number 1. And we're going to start out with 87 minus 29. Now, for most of us, this problem we could do relatively easily. However, one thing that we can do with rounding and estimation, and the reason why we're doing this practice, is that a lot of times when we borrow, so if I did this problem, I would borrow from the 8, change it into a 7, change my 7 to a 17, so I could do 17 minus 9, and then I would do 7 minus 2, and that would give me my answer. However, and I've noticed this a lot when students are dealing with 100, that when we are borrowing, sometimes we forget or we make an error with our borrowing, and that can cause a problem. So our rounding and estimation can be a good way for us to check and see if our answer is accurate. Because if we round correctly, then our answer is going to be pretty close to what our correct answer would be. Alright, so let's go ahead and we're going to be rounding to the tens place on all of these. So let's go ahead and just set up a second problem over here. So we're going to round 87 first, and we're rounding to the tens place. So I'm going to underline the 8, which is in my tens place, draw a little arrow to my 7, draw a circle around it, and remember, no matter what happens, everything from the 7, and if I had a decimal or anything past it, everything to the right is going to change to a 0. That's why I like to circle it, because no matter what I do, whether I raise the 8 or whether I let it rest and just leave it as an 8, everything to the right is still going to change to 0. Okay? So my 7, remember my rule, 5 or more, we go up, 4 or less, stay the same. So I'm going to just do a little graphic over here. So 5 or up, we add 1, 4 or less, we just leave it alone. Leave it as it is. Okay, so my 7 is 5 or more. So my 8 will become a 9. And so my 87 rounds to 90. I'm going to do the same thing with my 29. Again, I'm rounding to the tens place. I'm going to underline the 2. Draw an arrow to my 9. Circle my 9. The 9 is 5 or more. So I'm also going to raise my 2 to a 3. And so my 29 rounds to 30. And so now I've got 90 minus 30. Now hopefully most of us can do this in our heads, because if we can do 9 minus 3, then we should be able to do 90 minus 30, which is 60. Alright, now let's go back and go ahead and I just want us to do, just for this one, I want us to do our original problem and get an exact answer to see how close we are to our estimated answer. Alright, so again, this is going to be a little messy on my board, but I want to leave it as is. I'm going to change my 8 to a 7 because I'm carrying, changing my 7 to 17. So we've got 17 minus 9, which gives me 8, and then 7 minus 2 gives me 5. Now if I was going to round this to the tens place, then I would absolutely get 60. Because I would look at the 8, it's 5 or more, so I'm going to add 1 to my 5, I'm going to go up 1, and so my 58 would round to 60. Now, as we do the rest of these practice problems, I do not want you to find the exact answer. That is not what this is about. This is about practicing rounding and estimation. I just wanted to show you that, to show you we were only 2. The difference of 2 between our exact answer and our estimated answer. So, That's something we can do to go back and check if we were doing this and this was our actual problem, but we needed to do a check. We could say, okay, 87, I know that rounds to 90. 29, that rounds to 30. And so 90 minus 30 is going to give me 60. Well, if my exact answer was 58, yeah, that's probably right, because that's probably a good check. All right? All right, let's go on to number 2. And we are going to do 34 minus 33. And this almost seems too simple to give you guys, but it's good practice for rounding. All right, so 34. Going to round to the tens place again, so I'm going to underline my 3. Draw an arrow to the 4, circling the 4. The 4 is 4 or less, so I'm going to let it rest. I'm going to just leave my 3 as a 3. And my circle reminds me that everything to the right of that 3 is going to become a 0. So my 34 rounds to 30. And then my 33, again, underlining the 3 because I'm rounding to the tens place. Drawing an arrow to my 3 in the ones place, circling it. The 3 is 4 or less, so I'm going to let it rest. So my 3 here in the tens place stays a 3. And my 3 that I've circled becomes a 30. And so I get 30 minus 30, which gives me 0. Now, most of you probably could have looked at this and said, 34 minus 33, that's 1, Mr. Beckwith. But again, this is about us practicing rounding and estimation. Because once you get good at rounding and estimating, that's the kind of thing you can do in your head. You can do mental math that way and make a lot less mistakes. So you can minimize those mistakes by doing the rounding in your head and doing that mental math in your head. Some of you may have been able to do 34 minus 33 in your head. Hopefully most of you could. But again, this is to practice as we round and estimate, because that's going to help us with future operations as we get into some higher level stuff. Alright, let's do 2 more. Number 3 is 84 minus 32. So my 84, I'm rounding to the tens place, underlining my 8, drawing an arrow to the right, circling my 4. The 4 is 4 or less, so I'm going to let it rest. So my 84 rounds to an 80. Same thing with my 32, underlining my 3, which is in the tens place, circling my 2. The 2 is 4 or less, so I'm going to let it rest, so I end up with 80 minus 30, which gives me 50. Alright, last problem. Number 4. Do a little addition this time, just to mix it up. So we're going to do 46 plus 55. Alright. So again, rounding to the tens place, underlining my 4, which is in my tens place, drawing an arrow to my 6, circling it. The 6 is 5 or more, so I'm going to raise the score, so I'm going to add 1 to my 4 here, so my 56 rounds, my 46 rounds to 50. Same thing with my 55. Underline the 5, which is in the tens place, draw an arrow to the number next to it, circle it. My 5 is 5 or more, so I'm going to raise the score. I'm going to add 1 to my 5 in the tens place, which gives me 60. And so I end up with 50 plus 60. 0 plus 0 is 0. 5 plus 6 is 11.